Hi guys, Brett here from Hearns Hobbies, and today I am taking a look at service, repairing and rebuilding the mighty HR1 buggy. And I've really been enjoying it. This will be what, the 5th installment now, and we're going to do the shocks. So if you've seen me, it was straight from the racetrack, done about 3 meetings straight. It's been completely stripped. First episode I stripped it all, did the center gearbox, the center diff. Then I did the rear suspension module and the rear diff and reset the rear gear mesh. Then I did the same with the front end, redid the front and the differential, put it all back together. Then I've pieced it all back together, and here we are. So without further ado, let's get stuck into these big monster shocks. Just gonna sit the car down, out the way. Okay. Here we have these big shocks. Got a bit of a shock stand here. Try not to get that in the way too much. Some of the tools I'll be using today are these highly advanced calipers. Usually I would use locking ones. These are not usually my preferred ones, but I don't really care about the measurement so much. It's just about the reference, getting front to rear, left to right nice and even. Front to rear doesn't really matter because they're different length anyway. So you'll probably just see me rebuild one, but have a look here at the difference in length. So front ones are shorter ones, rear ones are the longer ones. And it's a good point actually that I did that. So I'm doing that now, and that is checking that if there is a bend in the shock shaft, you will see the bottom of the eyelet wobble a little bit like a banana. But this one's here, all 4 of these are all really nice and straight, which is really good. We're off to a good start. Now, like I said, this whole rebuild so far, the only parts I have changed has been the 2 outer front hinge pins. Really good, really cheap rebuild. All the bearings, everything. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the shocks. Now, if you've built one shock, you can build them all. So I won't build all of them on camera. You guys will fall asleep. It takes a little bit of time. I'm not worried so much about the preload collar, so I can just get that off and out of the way for the moment. Get the boot off. And there's a good indicator here whether there's any damage or anything by the amount of oil and debris inside the shock boot. And in this one there's none. There's no visible signs of leaking. Just having a look here. They definitely have a bit of an air gap in it. You can see that. And the DLC, the diamond-like coating on these shafts, you see it's a black, it's not a chrome. If I zoom right in, it's actually really, really nice. And well, now that I've pumped it up, it's actually really nice. These are really, really good shocks. 16 mil in diameter, same as all the big competition cars. Hard anodized bodies, aluminium tops. Yeah, quality components. Okay, so the first thing I will generally do is give them a clean off, because you don't want to be introducing rubbish into the shocks as you go along. So that's as simple as giving them a brush off, like so. And then of course you've seen me use this a lot. I'll probably change my nickname to Blue Tack or something. Bit of Blue Tack here, cleaning putty. Like I said, it's my secret weapon on cleaning on-road, off-road, anything. Does a really good job, as well as Nan's favourite tea towel. So it's getting any dirt and debris off. And at this point here, I will crack, and by crack, I will break the seal on the shocks before I go any further. Like so. Do that one back up. Again, grab it from the bottom and I'll undo the cartridge, because I'm going to show you guys how I rebuild the cartridge as well, not just change the oil. Crack that seal there. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is take a measurement, and that is going to be the shock shaft measurement. This is the front one, and this one here is 32 millimeters. We can see that there. So I know when I put this together, it does in fact have to be 32. Like I said, if it's a lock-in one, you can just keep it locked. The overall length is not really a concern. It's really just about making sure that left and right is right. There's a little bit of dirt and debris under the, must have been used in a really dusty environment, which goes without saying, it is an 8 scale buggy. Got some kitchen towel here that I work over actually. Now let's have a look. Now that container's already dirty obviously, but let's have a look at the condition of the, and this 9-step shock oil has actually worked really well. So that's what you'd expect to see in this. Like, it is discolored a little bit, but nowhere near like you see them in some people's shocks. And for this I will be using 400 and 500. There's not a great deal of big jumps at the local track where we'll be testing it. 400 and 500 weight 9 steps fluid, so 400 in the rear and 500 in the front will be plenty as a starting point. We're actually going up a little bit in oil. It did have 350 in the rear, but I did notice it probably landing a little bit harder on the rear than I'd like. So using the slightly thicker oil, 400, will give it a little bit more pack. Should help us get more traction as well. Let's see how it handles the bumps. We won't know until the day. And that can be dependent on the weather. So now I've got that done, I will use my soft jaw shock pliers here. These are JPRC ones, and I'm going to unwind the eyelet. Now usually, like I said, I would do all 4 at once. In this scenario though, I am just doing one at a time for the benefit of the viewers at home. My 9 steps gizmo, it's going to be fundamental in doing the shocks. Got the boot over here. At this point here, I'm going to undo the cartridge completely, and just be a little bit, so we've got the shock bush, and we'll take the piston out. Here we go. And you can see I'm using the plastic gizmo. A very, what I will call, traditional and common way to build the shocks. So let's have a look. Overhead town. So here we are looking at the shock piston, the shock shaft. This is what makes up the shock cartridge at the bottom. So here we have a guide or a bush, an O-ring, a guide, and then another O-ring. Be careful. Working over the kitchen cloth gives a great indication of how dirty everything is. I've got an O-ring here which will stay in situ. And again, I'm just going to, I don't like to introduce any chemicals into the shock body if I can help it. And I want to keep all dirt and debris out because that is the enemy. So the shock oil is pretty good. You can see there's no wear on the shock body looking around now. Beautiful hard anodized. This is a time now where you can inspect your pistons. These ones here are 5 by 1.3 mil. So these are very high pack piston, hence why the thinner oils. But I tell you what, that's what's giving this car amazing traction and acceleration. 5 by 1.3. Now the piston's a little bit tight than I would like actually. I'd like a little bit of, not free play, but I do like just a smidge if I can. If I, in fact, Rooney, don't have a 5mm tool, that's fine. There we go. Look at that, beautiful shock shaft, nice and straight. No nicks and burrs. Time to just clean everything down before reassembly. So again, I'm not spraying it down, definitely not using any WD-40 or anything that might harm the O-rings. You know, they already live in a condition which is quite harsh. And I'm going to put the top and bottom ones back in the same order, what they came out. Clean the bush. because the shocks are working that good, there's not going to be any need to change any of these parts. There was definitely no leaks. A little bit of blue tack around the top of the body. Okay, and we've got our bladder here for the bladder style shock, which is my favorite actually. I'm not a big fan of emulsion shocks. I feel that they're just a little bit inconsistent in my mind. They change from 1 minute to the next, where the bladder shocks are usually consistent and you can usually tune them. They do have a smaller tuning window, but I think for me they are my preferred method of damper unit. Okay, so first thing we're going to start on is putting the O-rings into some rubber grease, like so. Give it a nice liberal coating, put it into the body, a little bit more for good measure. Then we're going to put the bush in, then we're going to put the top O-ring, again using my plastic gizmo tool here from 9 Steps, making sure I'm not damaging. Then I'm going to put in the bush, and the bush will only go in one way. And when you're doing these up, there's a very fine thread, so I usually back it off until it clicks like that and then wind it on. Now I'm not going to wind it tight, I just want so it won't fall apart. I don't want any preload on those O-rings whatsoever, because I'm just about to put the shock shaft through, and there will be residual, you can see in here, residual shock assembly grease, so that will be fine for the thread. I'm going to go ahead now and push that through all the way down. I'm going to wipe off the excess, and it's at this point here where I will do my cartridge up. And I like to do it without oil in the damper unit shock. That way I can feel if I have over tightened or squished the O-rings, because you'll get a binding. And these ones are silky smooth. Silky smooth all the way. I'm really happy with that. Now, like I said, I would usually do them all at once, not today. I'm going to just do this one, and all 4 will be exactly the same. Okay, pinch this up. Again, using my soft jaw pliers, making sure never to use hardened steel jaws on your shock shafts. You need to look after them, because if you put an edge on there or something, they will destroy the O-rings immediately. Got a nice smooth finish. At this point now, I'll check the length before the boot goes on. Now we had 32.1 mil before. I've got to go in about another half a turn. Just get my... Perfect. Really happy with that. Okay, now I can sit my shock boot on there. Now what I like to do is bleed my shocks with the spring retainer on the bottom, and that's to ensure that I don't overbleed the shock, i.e. introduce air in by stroking, by over compressing the damper leg. Okay, so I've got the spring retainer on, and I've got the rubber boot on. Now we're going to fill it up. So the front one is going to have the heavier oil, so in this case it's 500 weight. Now I'm just going to lift it off the bottom. I'm going to fill it up. Now if I've done this right, all the air should come out in one bubble. Get it sitting above the piston. And down. Hopefully, did you see that big bubble? Hopefully that was it. Hopefully that's all the air we got in there. This just makes it nice and quick. If you have a champagne bubble in there by quick movements, it does in fact take longer for it to bleed out. So once to the top, down, can see there's air coming up. A lot of the air's come out. Okay, now usually you would let that sit for 10, 15, 20 minutes, but I'm doing this one on camera. So let's see what we can do. Just moving the piston ever so slightly. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get the bladder. I'm going to slide that in from the side, and I'm going to hold my little finger on there, pressing all the way down until the piston nut touches my finger, which it is, and then I'm going to put the cap on. It's a little bit of a messy job, this one. Now you've got to unwind it a little bit till it clicks to avoid damaging the thread. And this is where hopefully we can see how we've gone. Now usually, I'll be honest, it doesn't happen on the first time. Usually when you're bleeding shocks, I find it does seem to take 2 or 3 times to get it right for each one. I'm just going to clean off the excess oil now, because that's going to attract dirt and stuff on track, which we don't want, or give us an indication it looks like it's been leaking, which of course it hasn't been. Okay, put my leg back. And what I'm looking for now is the rebound of the shock. And I can see there's a tiny bit of rebound, like so. So I'm just going to go ahead and compress it all the way, back it off again, about 2 turns, and do it up. And I can see here out of the lid, there's been a bit of oil come out. So that should hopefully give me a great shock. And that's exactly what I want to see. No rebound whatsoever. Fantastic. So I can go ahead now and put this shock together, knowing that it's going to be a good unit. Going to wipe the spring down, get out a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. Wipe the spring down. Got my preload collar here. Again, just giving it a wipe over, make the buggy look nice and fresh while we're here, hey? The preload doesn't matter because the ride height will have to be done on track anyway. There we go, there is no air in there. There's no rebound, so it's not over full. It's a little bit of messy oil I've left on there, which I'm not happy about. You can see here, see me struggling with the spring on the boot. There we go. Last thing I'm going to do is leave a mess on there. Okay, put the... There we go. And that is how you build an 8 scale bladder style shock absorber, damper unit, whatever you want to call it. That is fantastic. That is really good. So that is the front end. I'm going to get to doing the other 3, and then you can join me when we put it all together and bring it together as a unit. Do the ride height, check it all out, take it from there. All right, I'm Brett from Hearns. Thanks for watching me rebuild this damper unit for the HR1.